Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we got another news and rumor video to discuss. We got a signing to look at, a couple of injury updates, some waiver updates, a tiny trade to talk about. We got a suspension of lengthy proportions to talk about. Plus, we got some trade rumors involving Ottawa, Vancouver, Boston, and New York Rangers. We'll go to all that coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the Internet Hockey Channel. Before we get started, don't forget to like this video and subscribe below. Thank you all for your support. We're to help you guys. So if you haven't already, leave the subscribe button down below and then leave a comment down in the comment section below. So you can all discuss in today's video. So in today's video, we got another interesting news and rumor video to discuss. We have a whole bunch of things to talk about in this video. So we're going to start off by looking at a signing that happened from our past couple of days. Only one signing, and that was with the Tampa Bay Lightning. It's after Andrei Vasilevskiy went out with an injury. The Tampa Bay Lightning signed longtime AHLer Brandon Halverson to a 2-year contract with the AV of $175,000 to fill in the short term as their backup with Vasilevskiy out. So it was an interesting signing there for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Halverson's been mostly in the AHL over the past couple of seasons. Last year, played in 14 AHL games, putting up a 2.18 GA and a 913 save percentage. Also had 913 save percentage in 32 ECHL games last year. He's been bouncing around. He's spent time in the AHL, the ECHL. He's also spent time in the German league. A while ago, back over in the 16, 17, 17, 18 seasons, he did play a couple of games with the New York Rangers. Started one game, had an 833 save percentage and a 4.78 GAA, so wasn't overly good in his one NHL start, and he hasn't had an NHL start since then, so he's mostly going to be a third or fourth stringer, can come up if the Bulls run into some goalie injuries, like they did a couple of days ago with Vasilevskiy. So there's a very interesting sign there for the Bulls. I don't think it'll be an overly huge, important sign for them, and I think as soon as Vasilevskiy's healthy, he'll be sent back down to some minors. So it's an interesting placement there for the Bolts, but Halverson is currently the backup for the Bolts after Vasilevskiy got injured, so it's an interesting pickup there. But the Bolts do sign depth goaltender Brandon Halverson to a 2-year league minimum deal to remain with the Bulls for the next couple of seasons. That was the only sign we got to from our past couple of days. Next, going over to a couple of injury updates. Now, when it comes to the injury updates, we have a whole bunch of injury updates to talk about here today. So first, in the Dallas Stars organization, Mason Marchand, who had missed over a month with a face injury, was active off injury reserve and returned to game action back over on Sunday. That's a big boost there for the Stars. Marchand's a solid top 9 forward, so to see him get back into the lineup is really good. Well, Nils Lundqvist had season-ending shoulder surgery after missing a week and a half due to it and was placed on long-term injury reserve. So Lundqvist is out for the season. Lundqvist is not an overly important piece of that Stars team, but still a solid 6th, 7th defenseman has been coming in with Heiskanen being out. So to see him go down with an injury is an awful blow there for the Stars, and he's going to miss quite a bit of time. So bad blow there for the Stars to lose Lundqvist, but get Marchand back is a really big boost there for them. Chicago's Connor Murphy, who had been out for the last month due to a groin injury, was active off injury reserve and returned to game action on Saturday. So it's a big boost there for the Hawks to see Murphy get back into the lineup on that blue line. Well, Louis Krejci was placed in injury reserve after suffering a concussion over on Saturday. So Murphy went back into game action over on Saturday, and Krejci suffered an injury that's going to keep him out for the next little while, so it's a bad blow there for the Hawks. Toronto had a slew of injury updates, as Jani Hakanpää will miss the Four Nations face-off as he continues to deal with a knee problem, so hopefully he'll be able to get better and we'll get back into the Leafs lineup at some point, but it's a bad thing to see him go miss the Four Nations face-off. Well, John Tavares, who had been out for a few weeks with a lower body injury, and Matthew Knies, who missed a week and a half with the upper body injury, were both activated off injury reserve and returned to game action on Saturday. So big boosts there for Toronto to see both Tavares and Matthew Knies get back into the lineup. Well, it's bad news to see Hakanpää miss the Four Nations face-off. Florida's Maki Samoskevich missed Saturday's game due to an illness in his day-to-day, so hopefully Samoskevich won't be out for an overly long period of time, but he did miss Saturday's game. Well, Jonah Gadjevich, who had missed 6 weeks with the upper body injury, was active off injury reserve and returned to game action on Saturday, so really big boost there for the Panthers to get a solid bottom 6 forward in Gadjevich back. But Samoskevich being out is not overly good, and hopefully he'll return not just in the future, but some interesting injury updates when it comes to the Florida Panthers. The Islanders also got a slew of injury updates. Semyon Varlamov suffered a setback with his lower body injury and is now not skating again, so it's a bad blow there. It's going to be at least another couple of weeks, if not longer, for the Islanders, so it's a bad blow there for Varlamov. Marcus Högberg, who was Varlamov's replacement in net, will now miss the next 4 weeks with upper body injury. He has already been placed in injury reserve, but still, to see Högberg be out for at least the next month, there's a bad blow there for the Islanders. Noah Dobson and Ryan Pulock should start to skate during the Four Nations face-off break as they work back from their respective injuries and could hopefully return at some point just after the Four Nations faceoffs. That's really great news for the Islanders. Well, Anthony LeClaire missed Saturday's game due to an illness since day-to-day. So just like Samoskevich, LeClaire missed Saturday's game, and hopefully he won't be out for an overly long period of time, and it's just a short-term injury. New York Rangers Adam Edstrom left Saturday's game due to an injury and didn't return, so hopefully Edstrom's okay, and he'll be back in the near future, but still, to see him go down with an injury is not really great. Riker Evans missed Saturday's game with upper body injury in his day-to-day for the Kraken, so it's a bad blow there for Seattle. Hopefully Evans gets back, not just in the future. He's actually turned out to be a really solid second pair defenseman for the Kraken this year, but it's bad to see him go down with an injury, and hopefully he'll be back in not just in future. Pittsburgh's Evgeny Malkin has started to skate in a non-contact jersey, but still with a lower body injury, there's some hope that he could return at some point just after the Four Nations face-off, so that could be a really big boost there for the Penguins, but interesting to see that Malkin's still out. At least he's starting to practice in a non-contact jersey. Minnesota's Kirill Kaprizov, who have been out for just over a week with a lower body injury, has been moved to long-term injury reserve, so not too surprised there. Kaprizov was scheduled to be out for 4 weeks, so he should be able to return as soon as he's healthy to play, but still interested out there. Well, Jonas Brodin, who had missed 12 games with a lower body injury, was active after long-term injury reserve and returned to game action on Sunday. So that's a really big boost there for the Wild. Brodin's a solid piece of that decor, so to see him go back into the lineup is really great news there for Minnesota. Detroit's Patrick Kane, who had missed 5 games with upper body injury, was active for injury reserve and got back into game action on Sunday. Just a big boost there for the Red Wings to get Kane, who's a fantastic top 6 forward, back into the lineup. Well, JT Compher, who missed just over a week with upper body injury, was placed in injury reserve, and Jeff Petrie, who had missed a couple of weeks now, has undergone surgery for undisclosed injury and will be out 6 to 8 weeks. So Compher and Petrie are both going to be out for a little bit of time. Petrie for a longer period of time, so bad blows there for the Red Wings, but at least they got Kane back. Kiefer Sherwood, who had missed 4 weeks with undisclosed injury, was active for injury reserve and returned to game action on Sunday, so that's a big boost there for the Canucks. They get a solid, hard-hitting forward back over for the Canucks. So it's a really big boost there for the Canucks to get a solid, hard-hitting bottom 6 forward back. Well, Quinn Hughes would miss Sunday's game with a hand injury in his day-to-day. So it's a bad blow there for the Canucks to see Hughes go down with an injury, and he's going to miss at least the next couple of games. So bad blow there for the Canucks to lose their star player in Quinn Hughes. Colorado's Scott Wedgwood missed Sunday's game with an upper body injury in his day-to-day, so hopefully Wedgwood won't miss too much time, but bad blow to see him be out for the Avalanche. Oliver Shillington was active for long-term injury reserve and should return soon from his upper body injury, so hopefully Shillington will be back in not just in the future, but that's good news there. That sounds like he's nearing a return. Well, Valery Nichushkin, who has been out for over a month with a lower body injury, has been moved to injury reserve, so hopefully Nichushkin will be back whenever he's healthy. He can be, but still it's a bad blow there for the Avalanche. Ottawa's Linus Ullmark was active with long-term injury reserve and backed up on Monday for the first time being on the roster in 18 games. So it's a big boost there for Ottawa. Ullmark should get the game action tonight against Tampa. So interesting note there for Ottawa to get Ullmark back, which is a really big boost. But Josh Norris suffered a mid-body injury over on Saturday, and he's going to be out multiple weeks. That's a bad blow there for the Senators to see Norris be out. And hopefully he won't miss too much time due to the injury, but that's a bad blow there for Norris to be out. But great news to see Ullmark get back into game action. Columbus's Marchenko has suffered a broken jaw, underwent surgery, and has now been placed in injury reserve, going to be out indefinitely. So Marchenko's been the goal-scoring machine for the Blue Jackets. So to see him go down with an injury is an extremely awful blow there for the Blue Jackets. Well, Luca Evangelista missed Monday's game with a lower body injury and is day-to-day. So a bad blow there for the Predators. Hopefully Evangelista returns, not just in future, but definitely not something you really want to see. So those are all the injury days from the past couple of days. Good to see guys like Ullmark, Sherwood, Brodin, and Nyes get back from their injuries, and hopefully they don't look too rusty in their returns. But bad news to see guys like Lundqvist, Samoskevich, Evans, and Compher all be out with injuries, and hopefully they won't be out for an overly long period of time. But some interesting injury dates from the past couple of days. Next, going over to a couple of waiver update. When it comes to waiver updates, we have one small waiver update to talk about. During one of our news videos recently, we talked about how Philip Giuseppe was on waivers on Saturday. I thought there was a possibility he could get claimed because he was a lower end guy who could be a solid bottom 6 help for a lot of teams, but I thought there was a most likely chance he wound up clearing. Well, he did wind up clearing. Philip Giuseppe wound up clearing on Sunday, so the Canucks had demoted him to the AHL. Not too surprising there. Like I said, Giuseppe's a really good player, but with the Canucks making some movements and acquiring O'Connor and Hedl, they didn't need Giuseppe at the NHL level. So they placed him on waivers, and he does clear, so that's a really big boost there for the Canucks. But still, it's an interesting waiver placement from our past couple of days. It was the only one. There's been no waiver updates since then, so interesting note there. But the Giuseppe was on waivers and is now cleared. We do have one small trade to discuss, and that's between the Utah Hockey Club and the Minnesota Wild, and it's a small deal, and the trade is as follows. The Utah Hockey Club acquired prospect Sam Walker from the Minnesota Wild in exchange for future consideration. So I guess Walker wasn't getting the best of opportunities, and Minnesota wanted a fresh start, and the Wild really didn't need anything for him, so they get future considerations and move off of Walker. Walker for Utah. This could be a decent pickup. Walker's on a 1-year deal with the AV extension just $85,000. He's only 25 years old, so he's on the younger side of things. Does have NHL experience over the past couple of years. Has played 13 NHL games, putting up a goal and an assist. So far this year, has no game of experience at the NHL level. Has only played in the AHL, putting up 2 goals and 11 points in 30 games after having 45 points in 70 AHL games last year. So, like I said, I think Walker could eventually be maybe like a solid 3rd, 4th line forward there for Utah. Probably still a year or 2 away, and that Utah team is pretty deep. So interesting note there, but that's a pretty good pickup there. And if they run into enough injuries, I think Walker could be a call-up option for Utah. So interesting trade here, but Utah acquires young player Sam Walker from Minnesota. And lastly, going over to a suspension that we saw back over on Saturday in the game between Minnesota and Ottawa. We saw Ryan Hartman in the face-off go in for the puck and then just take Tim Stützle's head and slam it down on the ice. He was ejected from the game. 5-minute major, 10-minute game misconduct. He was out of the building. There was a talk about him having a hearing. It was the hearing that would allow them to suspend him for 5+ games. So I thought he would probably get like 6 or 7 games because that was a pretty blatant intent to injure penalty. They wound up giving him a 10-game suspension. Hartman does have history of being suspended at the NHL level, so they probably took that into consideration. We'll have to wait and see if he does try and appeal the situation, but a 10-game suspension is quite lengthy, especially at this current point in the season. I think he's already suffered like his 1st or 2nd game on a suspension, so he's already missed a couple, but still, that's a major suspension for Minnesota, as Hartman's a decent top 9 forward, so now they won't have him, and he's going to miss quite a bit of time, which will take a big pay cut out of his wallet. So interesting note there, but I think that's the right move by player safety. That was a complete and blatant attempt to injure on Hartman's part, and I think that is a completely suspendable play. I'm just like quite a bit shocked that they actually went for 10 games. So an interesting suspension update there for Hartman, but that's the only other piece of news I want to talk about here today. And lastly, going over to a couple of trade rumors. So we got a couple of trade rumors here to talk about. First, a trade that could involve both the Ottawa Senators and Vancouver Canucks. You know, the Canucks were very busy last week. They moved off for JT Miller, traded him to the New York Rangers organization, acquired Marcus Pettersson, Andrew O'Connor from Pittsburgh. So they were a very busy team last week, making a couple of moves, but they are not done. According to Sadir Shah, who's really connected Canucks person, was talking about the Canucks, and he says don't expect them to be sitting back after these couple of moves. He says they are currently targeting a young NHL forward, someone who's probably in the early to mid-20s, who can really grow with the current core, is probably signed for a couple of years. So that current tweet led to a lot of people believing there could be a couple of guys the Canucks to target, but one guy in particular who's getting a lot of traction and being linked to the Vancouver is Ottawa Senators center Josh Norris. Now, Norris recently suffered an injury. We just talked about this, so he's going to be out for a couple of weeks, but I think there could be a possibility he still could get traded. We talked about this earlier in the year. The Senators really want to move on from Norris. Now, personally, I think at this point in time, the Sens should not move on from Norris. He's been a really good piece on that team and has scored them some big goals. I've given themselves some points this year, so if they were to trade Norris, I would say that should be more of an off-season move. Roll with Norris right now and keep him in the fold, but we know that the Senators really do want to try and add some more offensive upgrades. Could be looking at maybe some defensive upgrades, so I could see them trying to move Norris in order to make the cap work, try and bring in someone else. So I could see it possibly happen. We know that the Canucks are probably going to be wanting another center who can work with Hedl and Pettersson down the middle. Norris, I think, could be a really fantastic second-line center behind Elias Pettersson. Like I said, I'm not exactly sure what the Canucks would give up in order to acquire Norris, but I guess it would be like a second-round pick, maybe someone off the roster, like maybe a Connor Garland or something like that, and maybe a prospect. I don't exactly know, but it definitely seems like that sort of fits the type of player that the Canucks are trying to get. Someone in their mid-20s who can play center and can grow with that core. So it'll be interesting to see if this is a trade that does come to fruition. Some people have also said maybe you could try and still target Dylan Cousins, as that's another young center who's can grow with that team. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens there, but that's something the Canucks are going to try and target a younger player in their mid-20s to try and grow with their team. And who knows, maybe a guy like Norris or Cousins could be a guy who the Canucks try and target. Next, going over to the Boston Bruins. According to Elliot Friedman, he was recently talking about the Boston Bruins and said that there is a possibility that if the Bruins lose a couple more games over the next couple of weeks and they're leading into the trade deadline and it doesn't look like they're going to make the playoffs, there is actually a possibility the Bruins could move Brad Marchand. I know we recently talked about this in one of our recent trade rumor videos about how the Bruins could be sellers, and it seems like Marchand's name is a name that keeps on coming up. We've heard his name linked to like Toronto. Part of me thinks maybe a Western Conference team like a Vegas or an Edmonton or a Dallas could try and look at acquiring his services. Like Marchand is built for the playoffs. If he was to be on the block, there would be a ton of playoff-bound teams who would have major interest, and the Bruins could be getting a massive return for him. Like, I could see the Bruins get a first-round pick, get a really good prospect, and probably a young NHL-level player in exchange for Brad Marchand. I think that's something that the Bruins could easily pull off if they were to move Marchand. Now, like you said, Marchand, final year of his deal, he's making $6.1 million, which isn't overly egregious for what he brings. He's a really good player. He's the current captain of the Boston Bruins. So like I said, it would be a major move if the Bruins were to move off of Brad Marchand, and I personally do not see it happening, but with the amount of people that have been talking about Marchand trade for the next little while, it's got to be a possibility at least. So we're going to have to wait and see on that, but if the Bruins continue to falter over the next little while and they fall a little bit more in the standings, expect to hear at least Brad Marchand's name in the rumor mill and potentially see a trade. So we're going to have to wait and see on that. Going over to the New York Rangers, according to Dave Pano of thefourthperiod.com, he says that he knows that the Rangers have been a busy team this year. Started off by trading Jacob Trouba, then he traded Capo Caco, they acquired JT Miller just last weekend, so they made a whole bunch of moves, but he says they're not done, and another guy that might get traded in the not too distant future is Rangers defenseman Keandre Miller. Now, Miller has been a really solid stud defenseman, especially last year. He had a really good breakout season. This year, he's taken a little bit of a step back. He's been in the rumor mill a lot over the past while. He's entering the final year of his deal. He'll be an RFA in the offseason. The Rangers may not want to pay the sort of money that Keandre Miller could get, and he's arbitration eligible, so he could be walked right to free agent status. So instead of maybe having all that hassle, the Rangers might consider trying to move him. Now, David Panoda linked 3 teams to Miller, and that's 3 Pacific Division teams. That's the Canucks, the Sharks, and the Ducks. He says that the Canucks, even though they just traded with the Rangers, may still have some opportunity to try and add to that blue line. We know they just acquired Marcus Pettersson, but they could definitely use another solid blue line upgrade. Miller's a guy who could really work with that core long term, so I think that could be a really good fit there. For the Sharks and the Ducks, they are more rebuilding teams, but you can see the future of those teams, and it wouldn't be overly shocking if those teams tried to make a move where they could get someone, maybe move out a couple of future assets to try and get someone who can help them both now and definitely in the future. Like the Ducks and Sharks would have plenty of cap space to sign into his new deal, and on top of that, they both have a huge hole in their blue line. Like the Ducks blue line is filled with very young players, so they could probably use someone who's a little bit more older but could still work well with that team. Whereas for the Sharks, we know they also have a couple of younger players, but their blue line is really taking a hit over the past couple of years too, and it could definitely use another younger guy like this. So we're gonna have to wait and see what happens there, but Keandre Miller's name continues to come up in trade rumors and trade discussions, and I would not be overly surprised if we did see the New York Rangers move Keandre Miller before a trade deadline, especially if it was to help them get an upgrade in some areas. So we're gonna have to wait and see on that, but keep your eye on Keandre Miller and maybe the Canucks, Ducks, and Sharks as potential landing spots. And lastly, going over to the Ottawa Senators, Bruce Garrioch was recently talking about the Senators, and he mentioned 2 players who the Senators may try and target for NHL's trade deadline, and they have been linked to, and that is Hawks forward Ryan Donato and Kraken forward Brandon Tanev. Now, Brandon Tanev was linked to Ottawa back in the offseason, but that was when Chris Tanev was being rumored as a potential trade candidate for Ottawa that Ottawa could try and go after. They could try and reunite the Tanev brothers in Ottawa. That didn't indeed happen, and now Chris Tanev is in Toronto, but it does seem that they still have some interest. Brandon Tanev is a heart and soul type guy, really works really well with any locker room. I think he'd be a really solid bottom 6 forward, can also put up some big goals, so I wouldn't be overly surprised if the Senators trade for him. With Tanev being a pending UFA and the Kraken on the trend downwards, I think they could definitely try and trade him to Ottawa. When it comes to Ryan Donato, he's having himself a career year. I think he's already at like 15 goals this year for the Blackhawks. There's been a lot of talk that Donato will be moved and the Hawks will get a massive return, and I think Ottawa could be a really good fit for him. Donato being on like the 3rd or 2nd line for Ottawa, putting in some goals, sort of being like another Adam Gaudette type player this year who's been mostly a bottom 6 forward throughout his entire career but can't play higher in the Ottawa Senators organization. I think could be a really good fit there for Donato. So we're gonna have to wait and see on that. Definitely a chance that Ottawa does go out and try and add some forward help before the trade deadline, with their forward group not being the best this year. And pending UFA guys such as Ryan Donato and Brandon Tanev could be major trade targets for all the Senators. So we're gonna have to wait and see on that. But that's what I'm talking about for today. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this down in the comment section below. What do you think about all that we discussed here today? Do all the Senators target Donato or Tanev, and if so, what sort of return would they have to give up for those 2 guys? Do the Rangers move Keandre Miller, and if so, could Vancouver, Anaheim, or San Jose be a landing spot? Does Boston move Brad Marchand, and if so, what sort of return are they getting for Marchand? Do the Canucks and Senators pull off a trade that involves Norris to Vancouver? Plus, what do you think about the Hartman 10-game suspension, the signing, the trade, the waiver update, and all the injury updates? Definitely love your thoughts on all of that. down in the comment section below. That's all I'm going to talk for today. When you like this video, if you'd like to subscribe below. Thank all your support. We're to have you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to comment down in the comment section below. So something else guys in this video. I also have a blog to news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that. So check that out. The link down in the description below. And can't wait to see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.